You're living inside your head. You realize that? You're living in a world of thoughts, a swirling, constantly changing storm of judgments, beliefs, anxieties, and desires. This is your inner world, and most of us are so absorbed in it, so consumed by it, that we've forgotten what it feels like to simply be. The present moment slips by like sand through your fingers, because your mind is somewhere else. Often somewhere in the past or future. Your mind has become your identity, and it has created the illusion that you are a victim of your own thoughts. Let's take a step back. Think about this. You wake up every morning, and the first thing you do is think. You think about your problems, your to-do list, the worries you carry from yesterday. You think about how you can make the day better, how you can fix the things that went wrong. And in doing so, you are locked inside a prison of your own making. But here's the thing. You don't need to be trapped anymore. You have the power to break free, to stop identifying with those endless thoughts, to wake up from the illusion. There is a story of a man who spent his life trying to conquer the world, chasing after success, wealth, and status. He built his empire, amassed his fortune, yet he was never at peace. He was always striving for the next thing, the next achievement. But one day, after a series of unfortunate events that shook his very foundation, he had a moment of clarity. He realized that everything he had worked for, everything he had chased, was just an extension of his mind's projections. In that moment, he let go. He stopped trying to control the world around him and simply let it be. The world didn't need to change for him to feel free. He just needed to change his relationship with it. Now, this doesn't mean we stop taking action. It doesn't mean we stop moving toward our goals. It simply means that we stop attaching our sense of self-worth to the outcome. Your worth is not in the future, in the things you don't yet have, or in the mistakes you made in the past. Your worth is in the very being of who you are right now. You are not the thoughts in your head. You are the awareness behind them. Have you ever observed how a thought comes and goes? One moment you're lost in a worry about something that may or may not happen, and the next your mind has shifted to something else. But in that moment of awareness, when you observe those thoughts, you are free. You are no longer bound by them. You are the space in which the thoughts arise. And that space is infinite. Think about children, how they live in the moment. A child doesn't worry about the future, doesn't cling to the past. They simply experience what is happening right now. If they're playing with a toy, they're completely immersed in it. When they're laughing, they're not thinking about anything else. They're not caught up in their minds. We were all once like that. But somewhere along the way, we started to identify with the noise in our heads. We stopped living from the pure, untainted awareness. Here's another example. Imagine you're walking in the woods and you come across a tree. You stop, and for a moment you simply observe the tree. The way the branches stretch toward the sky, the way the leaves rustle in the wind. You're not thinking about what happened yesterday. You're not worrying about what might happen tomorrow. You're just present, fully connected to the experience. That tree is not a thought. It simply is. And in that moment, you too are just being. You are no longer defined by the thoughts, the worries, or the narratives your mind creates. You are one with what is. Life doesn't need to be an endless cycle of striving, achieving, and chasing. The key is to stop looking outside for validation, for meaning. The key is to realize that everything you're searching for, you already possess. In every moment, you are surrounded by the fullness of life. You don't need to become someone else. You don't need to reach some distant goal to be fulfilled. You already have everything you need within you. It's all here right now. So let go. Let go of the stories, the identities, the mental constructs you've built around yourself. You are not your thoughts, you are not your past, and you are not your future. You are the awareness, the space in which all of this arises. You are the present moment, and in that moment you are free, you are not your thoughts. At first this may sound like a simple or even abstract statement, but it is one of the most powerful realizations you can ever come to. In the hustle and bustle of everyday life, it's easy to become consumed by the constant chatter in our minds. We think thoughts about our work, our relationships, our past experiences, our worries, and our dreams. These thoughts are endless, coming and going in a never-ending stream, often without our conscious awareness. We identify with these thoughts as if they are a reflection of who we truly are. But the truth is that we are not these thoughts. We are the awareness, the observer, that watches these thoughts rise and fall. Think about the times when you've been lost in thought, perhaps at work, in conversation, or even while doing something you enjoy. Your mind races ahead, worrying about the future, replaying past events, or creating elaborate scenarios about what might happen next. During these moments, it's easy to feel overwhelmed by the flood of thoughts. It's almost as if your mind has taken control of you and you are merely a passenger along for the ride. But what if, in those moments, you could step back and simply observe those thoughts, as if you were watching them from a distance? What if you could realize that you are not the thoughts themselves, but the space in which they arise? This is a crucial distinction. Thoughts are like clouds passing through the sky. They come and they go. Some are light and fluffy, while others are heavy and dark. But no matter how many clouds fill the sky itself remains unchanged. Similarly, your thoughts come and go, but your true essence, the awareness that observes them, remains constant and unaffected. You are not defined by the fleeting nature of your thoughts. You are the observer, the stillness beneath the surface. The mind can create an endless array of thoughts, but it is the awareness that watches them that gives you the ability to choose how you respond to them. When you begin to understand this, it can be incredibly freeing. We often get trapped in our thoughts, identifying with them so strongly that we believe they define us. We think we are the anxious person, the overworked individual, the person who struggles with self-doubt. We become attached to the idea that our thoughts are the essence of who we are. But this is a misunderstanding. Thoughts are simply mental events. They are not permanent. They do not define you. In fact, many of the thoughts we experience are not even our own. They are conditioned responses, shaped by past experiences, societal expectations, and the opinions of others. They are not your authentic self. They are mental habits that have been built over time. To break free from this cycle, you must learn to detach yourself from the thoughts that arise in your mind. This is not to say that you should suppress or ignore your thoughts, but rather that you should cultivate the awareness to observe them without judgment. When you start to see yourself as the observer, the space in which thoughts appear, you begin to detach from their grip. You no longer automatically believe every thought that enters your mind. You recognize that you have the power to choose your response. This awareness gives you the freedom to create a new relationship with your thoughts. Imagine for a moment being able to sit in silence and simply watch your thoughts without being pulled into them. Picture yourself observing a thought without reacting emotionally, without judgment. Maybe a thought comes up about something that happened yesterday, a worry about a future event, or a memory of an old regret. Instead of getting lost in that thought, you simply observe it and let it pass. You realize that you do not need to identify with it. It is just a thought. It is not you. It does not have the power to define who you are unless you allow it to. And in that space of awareness, you find peace. This realization is profound because it opens up a new way of living. When you stop identifying with your thoughts, you stop allowing them to dictate your emotions, your actions, and your experience of life. You no longer feel the need to constantly analyze, plan, and worry. You can simply be. This is the freedom that comes with understanding that you are not your thoughts. You are the awareness that experiences them, and in that awareness, you are free to live fully in the present moment. The illusion of the mind is one of the greatest obstacles we face in life. Most of us are so entrenched in the constant flow of thoughts that we forget to question the very foundation of those thoughts, the belief that they define who we are. This belief is so deeply ingrained that we live our lives as if our thoughts, worries, and judgments are the absolute truth. Yet, the truth is that the mind, in all its complexity, is not the solid reality we assume it to be. It is a dynamic and ever-changing stream of mental events, none of which have a fixed or permanent nature. The mind is an illusion, a construct that, when left unchecked, can deceive us into thinking that it is the ultimate authority in our lives. We are constantly bombarded by thoughts, each one flowing in and out of consciousness like waves crashing on a shore. These thoughts come from various places: past experiences, cultural conditioning, societal expectations, and personal biases. Some thoughts are fleeting, while others linger longer, sometimes creating intense emotions or behaviors. Often we don't even notice how much power these thoughts have over us. We accept them without question, letting them shape our self-image, our identity, and the way we experience the world. This is the illusion. We identify so deeply with the mind that we believe we are nothing more than the sum of our thoughts. Consider this. When you wake up in the morning, what is the first thing you do? You may check your phone, review your schedule, or think about the day ahead. Immediately, your mind jumps into action, projecting scenarios, analyzing situations, and creating judgments. You're swept into a torrent of thoughts, none of which truly exist in the present moment. They are simply mental images and narratives about a future that has not yet unfolded or a past that is long gone. Yet, in those moments, you believe them. You believe that those thoughts are true, that they are an accurate reflection of reality, but in reality, they are just fleeting mental images, creations of your mind built upon old patterns and habitual thinking. This is where the illusion of the mind becomes apparent. The mind, by its very nature, is constantly changing. It's like a river that never flows in the same direction twice. And yet, despite its fluid nature, we often treat our thoughts as if they are concrete and immutable truths. We identify with the mind's projections, allowing them to dictate our behavior, our relationships, and our sense of self-worth. But none of this is the truth of who we are. We are not the fluctuating thoughts that pass through our minds. We are the awareness, the stillness that observes them. The mind thrives on constant thinking, on projecting past experiences onto the future, and on creating narratives that attempt to explain or control our lives. It's a mental construct designed to help us navigate the world, but when it takes over, it becomes an illusion. It creates a sense of separation, a belief that we are disconnected from the world around us, from others, and from ourselves. We become trapped in the idea that we need to constantly think, plan, and worry to survive. But this constant mental noise is not real. It is a distraction, a veil that keeps us from seeing the world as it truly is. What happens when we let go of this illusion? What happens when we stop identifying so strongly with the mind and its endless stream of thoughts? We begin to experience life as it truly is, free from the constraints of the mind's projections. We see the world with fresh eyes, no longer clouded by judgments or expectations. We begin to live in the present moment, free from the need to analyze, control, or predict. In that freedom, we discover that life is far more expansive, more beautiful, and more connected than we ever imagined. The illusion of the mind has kept us trapped for so long, but it is only an illusion. It's not real. The true essence of who we are lies beyond the mind, in the awareness that observes it. This awareness is still, it is clear, and it is eternal. When we recognize this, we can step out of the illusion and into the freedom of being. We no longer need to chase after the mind's fleeting desires, its anxieties, or its judgments. We can simply rest in the present, in the awareness that is always here, always available, and always free from the mind's illusions. The mind is powerful, but it is not who we are. It is a tool, a means of navigation, not the master of our lives. When we stop identifying with the mind, we stop being enslaved by its illusions. We can return to our true nature, which is far deeper, more peaceful, and more expansive than anything the mind can ever conceive. The present moment is all there truly is. Yet it's so often overlooked, ignored, or dismissed in the frenzy of our daily lives. The moment we are in right now, the space between our breath, the pulse of our heart, the feeling of the air on our skin, is the only reality we can truly experience. Yet how many times do we find ourselves distracted, caught up in the past or the future, as though those times are more real than the moment at hand? We have become so conditioned to think about what has already happened or what might happen that we forget that this moment is all we ever have. The present moment is not just a fleeting space between past and future, it is the essence of life itself. And when we fully embrace it, we unlock a deeper sense of peace, connection, and awareness. Imagine for a moment that you are sitting in a park, perhaps on a bench, watching the world around you. Children run by laughing and playing. Birds chirp in the trees. The wind rustles through the leaves, and yet despite all this beauty, your mind is elsewhere. You might be replaying a conversation from yesterday, worried about a task you have to do tomorrow, or planning your next move in a game you're playing in your head, while your body is sitting in the park, fully present in that space. Your mind is somewhere else, completely disconnected from the reality around you. You are physically present, but mentally you are somewhere in the past or the future, disconnected from the very life that is unfolding before you. Now, what would happen if in that moment you allowed yourself to fully focus on the here and now? What if you stopped thinking about the past or future and allowed yourself to simply observe, to feel, to breathe? You would begin to notice the subtle details of the moment, the warmth of the sun on your skin, the sound of your own breath, the way the light dances on the leaves. You would realize that there is nothing missing in that moment, that everything you need to feel at peace is right there around you in the present. The moment itself becomes a sanctuary, a place where you can find rest from the noise of your thoughts. The reality is, we spend so much of our time either regretting the past or anticipating the future. Both of these mental states pull us away from the richness of the present. The past is gone, its events are fixed, and there's nothing we can change about it. Yet we often find ourselves caught in the loop of rehashing old memories, replaying mistakes, or longing for what once was. Similarly, we look toward the future filled with hopes, fears, and expectations, creating mental scenarios about what might happen, worrying about outcomes that haven't even occurred. We create an entire mental world built on the past and the future, and in doing so, we overlook the beauty, simplicity, and peace that the present moment offers. But when we stop and choose to truly be here, when we let go of the need to control or manipulate what happens, we begin to experience life in its fullness. The present moment is not a concept. It is alive, it is tangible, and it is constantly unfolding. The moment you allow yourself to experience it fully, you begin to realize that the past and future are just thoughts. They are mental constructions that only exist in your mind. What is real is this very moment, the one you're living right now. And when you surrender to it, you find that peace is always available. Think about a time when you were completely immersed in something, a conversation with a friend, a piece of music, a walk in nature. In those moments, your mind wasn't caught up in thoughts about the past or the future. You were simply present, experiencing whatever was happening in that moment. That is the true power of the present moment. When you are fully engaged in it, life becomes vibrant and you experience a deeper connection to everything around you. You are not separate from the world. You are part of it. And the moment you stop thinking and start experiencing, you merge with it. When we live in the present, we are not bound by the weight of the past or the uncertainty of the future. We let go of the constant need to control or predict, and instead we allow ourselves to be. There is nothing more liberating than stepping out of the cycle of past and future and simply being here now. In that space of presence, we find clarity, peace, and a deep sense of contentment that is not dependent on external circumstances. The present moment holds the key to true freedom. We live in a world that constantly pushes us toward external validation, telling us that we need to achieve, accumulate, and possess in order to be worthy. From the moment we are born, we are conditioned to look outside ourselves for approval, whether it's from our parents, teachers, friends, or society at large. We are taught to measure our success by what we have or what we do, and as a result, we often attach our sense of self-worth to these external markers. But the truth is, our value doesn't lie in what we accomplish or acquire. It doesn't lie in the approval of others or in the titles we hold. Our worth is inherent, intrinsic, and exists in the very core of who we are, long before we achieve anything or gain anything. Think about how often we get caught up in the pursuit of something, whether it's a career milestone, a relationship, or the acquisition of material possessions. We think, if I can just reach this goal, I'll be happy. If I can just attain this thing, I'll feel complete. But as soon as we achieve it, we realize that the happiness or sense of fulfillment we expected doesn't last. The goalpost keeps moving, and soon we're on to the next pursuit, convinced that the next thing will finally give us the satisfaction we crave. But this cycle of external striving only reinforces the illusion that our worth is tied to what we do, what we have, or what others think of us. It keeps us chasing something that is ultimately fleeting, never allowing us to experience the deep, lasting fulfillment that comes from knowing our true value. Imagine you are on a journey to reach the top of a mountain. You believe that once you reach the summit, everything will make sense. The view will be breathtaking, and you will finally feel at peace. But when you get to the top, you realize that the mountain is only one part of the landscape, and there are many more mountains to climb. And even when you reach the highest peak, the satisfaction is temporary, and the pursuit starts again. This is what happens when we tie our sense of worth to the outcomes of our efforts. We constantly chase after something outside of ourselves, and in doing so, we overlook the most important thing, the understanding that we are worthy right here, right now, just as we are. True fulfillment comes when we recognize that our worth is not contingent on anything outside of us. These things may bring temporary happiness, but they are not the source of our true value. Our worth comes from within. It comes from the very fact that we are alive, that we are conscious, that we have the capacity to love, to feel, to experience. We don't need to do anything to earn our worth. It is already inherent in our existence. This is a powerful shift in perspective. When we stop seeking validation from the outside world, we open ourselves up to a deeper, more authentic experience of life. We begin to live from a place of wholeness, knowing that we are complete in ourselves. Our actions no longer come from a place of trying to prove our worth, but from a place of expressing our true selves. The external world may still offer challenges, but we no longer feel the need to meet those challenges in order to prove anything to anyone, including ourselves. We do things because we want to, because it brings us joy or growth, not because we need it to define who we are. Consider the impact of this shift on your daily life. When you recognize your intrinsic worth, You begin to let go of the constant pressure to perform, to meet other people's expectations, and to achieve for the sake of approval. You become free from the toxic cycle of comparison and competition. Instead of measuring your worth by how much you've accomplished or how many people admire you, you measure it by your capacity for love, kindness, and presence. You begin to live from a place of self-acceptance, knowing that you are already whole just as you are. This doesn't mean you stop pursuing goals or dreams, but it means you do so from a place of inner peace and confidence, not from a place of lack or need. Living from this place of understanding allows us to cultivate healthier relationships as well. When we are secure in our own worth, we stop seeking validation from others. We can give and receive love without the need for constant affirmation. We don't need others to complete us or to make us feel valuable. Instead, we can simply enjoy the connection with others, free from the fear of rejection or judgment. This allows us to experience deeper, more authentic relationships based on mutual respect, trust, and love. Ultimately, true fulfillment is found not in what we have or do, but in who we are. When we recognize our inherent worth, we begin to live in alignment with our true nature, free from the need for external validation. We are enough, just as we are. And when we live from this truth, we open ourselves up to a life of peace, contentment, and authentic joy. True freedom doesn't come from the world around us, it comes from within. We often look to external circumstances for liberation, believing that if only we could change our surroundings, our relationships, or our job situation, we would be free. We place our hope in external achievements, thinking that they will bring us the peace and freedom we so desperately seek. We dream of a life where everything aligns perfectly, where all the pieces of the puzzle fit together, and in that imagined life, we hope to finally feel at ease. But the truth is that external changes, no matter how desirable or well-intentioned, can never truly provide the deep sense of freedom we long for. True freedom arises when we shift our perception and stop waiting for the world to change. It comes from understanding that our relationship with the world and with ourselves is the key to liberation. Imagine for a moment that you are carrying a heavy weight on your shoulders. Perhaps it's the weight of unfulfilled desires, unresolved conflicts, or unmet expectations. Every day you feel the burden of this weight, believing that if you could just change something in your life, your job, your relationship, or your circumstances, then you would feel free from this heaviness. But no matter how many changes you make, the weight still follows you. This is because the weight isn't external, it's within you. It is tied to the way you perceive your life and how you relate to the world around you. No external change will ever lift this weight unless you first shift the way you perceive it and stop carrying it in the first place. The mind has a way of creating the illusion that we are trapped in situations or circumstances that we cannot escape from. We believe that freedom can only come when we've achieved certain goals, acquired specific things, or solved particular problems. We become fixated on the idea that if we can control the external environment, if we can manipulate the world around us, we will feel liberated. But this is a false hope. No matter how much we change on the outside, we will always carry the mental and emotional patterns of attachment, fear, and resistance with us unless we address them from within. True freedom, then, comes from releasing the need for control over external circumstances and instead embracing a new relationship with them. When we stop struggling against reality, when we stop fighting the way things are, we create space for peace to emerge. The key is to accept what is happening in the present moment without resistance. This doesn't mean that we passively accept everything that happens to us without action or intention, but it does mean that we stop letting our internal world be dictated by the external one. We stop believing that our sense of worth, happiness, or freedom depends on anything outside of ourselves. We let go of the illusion that we are victims of our circumstances and instead recognize our power to choose how we respond to them. When we stop fighting against life, we realize that we are no longer prisoners of our circumstances. Life becomes something we engage with, not something we try to control or escape from. We learn to respond to challenges with equanimity, without the emotional turbulence that typically accompanies them. Instead of reacting with fear, anger, or frustration, we can approach each situation with clarity and presence. This shift in perception allows us to live with a deep sense of inner freedom, knowing that no matter what happens in the external world, we are not bound by it. Our peace, our sense of well-being, and our freedom are not contingent upon the fluctuations of the world. They are anchored in our ability to remain present and aware, regardless of what is happening around us. In this state of freedom, we no longer need to control everything in order to feel at ease. We recognize that we are not defined by our possessions, our successes, or the approval of others. We are defined by the peace that we cultivate within ourselves. This inner peace becomes the foundation for all our actions. Instead of striving to achieve things in order to feel good about ourselves or to prove our worth, we begin to act from a place of fulfillment, knowing that we are already enough. We stop seeking external validation and start living from a place of authenticity and self-acceptance. In this way, we are free from the chains of comparison, competition, and the need to constantly prove ourselves. This inner freedom also allows us to embrace the present moment fully, without the burden of past regrets or future worries. Freedom comes from the realization that the only moment we ever truly have is the one we are in right now. When we let go of the need for external validation or the desire to control our circumstances, we are able to experience life in its fullness, without the interference of mental constructs or emotional attachments. In that space, we discover that we are already free. We have always been free. And the only thing that ever kept us bound was the illusion that freedom was something to be achieved from the outside in. True freedom comes from within, and it is available to us in every moment, whenever we choose to embrace it. The mind often leads us to believe that we are separate from the world around us. It creates divisions between us and others, between what we have and what we want, between what is and what could be. We become trapped in these stories, believing that we are isolated individuals struggling to navigate a world that is out of our control. But in truth, the separation we feel is an illusion. The very idea that we are separate from the world, from others, or even from ourselves is a mental construct. When we begin to see through this illusion, we realize that we are deeply interconnected with everything around us. The boundaries we perceive between ourselves and the world are not real. They are products of the mind that, when we recognize them for what they are, lose their power over us. Think for a moment about how you typically experience the world. We tend to see ourselves as individuals, moving through the world, interacting with other people, objects, and events. In this view, we are separate from what we encounter, as though there is a wall between us and everything else. We might even see life as a series of challenges that we must face alone. In these moments, we experience a sense of isolation, as though we are separate from others, and perhaps even separate from our true selves. This separation creates a sense of loneliness, frustration, and disconnection that many of us struggle with daily. However, when we start to pay attention, we realize that this sense of separation is just a thought, a mental framework we have adopted to make sense of the world. The truth is, we are not separate. The air we breathe, the food we eat, the relationships we have, the thoughts that arise in our minds, everything is interconnected, part of a vast web of life that is constantly unfolding. We are not isolated entities trying to navigate a chaotic world. We are part of the very fabric of existence. Our thoughts, our actions, and our presence all ripple out into the world, influencing and being influenced by everything around us. This realization begins to shift our perspective when we see ourselves as part of something greater, something far beyond our individual self. We stop feeling like we are disconnected or alone. We begin to recognize that we are a reflection of the entire universe, and that everything in the universe is also a reflection of us. The very air we breathe has been shared by countless others before us, and will continue to be shared by others long after we are gone. The food we eat, the water we drink, the energy we use, it all comes from the same source, and it all circulates back into the earth. Our bodies are made up of the same elements that make up the stars, the mountains, the oceans. The separation we feel is simply a construct of the mind, which divides and categorizes in an attempt to control what cannot be controlled. When we let go of this illusion of separation, we begin to see that we are not separate from others. We are all part of the same interconnected web of life. The people around us, our families, our friends, even strangers, are not others, but extensions of the same energy that flows through us. Their joys, their struggles, their dreams, their fears, they are part of the same shared human experience that connects us all. When we recognize this interconnectedness, we stop seeing others as competitors, as obstacles, or as threats. Instead, we see them as fellow travelers on the same journey, as reflections of ourselves. The sense of competition and comparison dissolves, replaced by empathy, compassion, and understanding. This understanding also opens the door to a deeper connection with ourselves. When we see ourselves as separate from the world, we often feel disconnected from our own true nature. We view our thoughts and feelings as separate from who we really are, creating a gap between our internal experience and our external reality. But when we realize that there is no true separation, we begin to see that our inner world is not isolated from the world around us. It is part of the same interconnected whole. The thoughts we have, the emotions we experience, the desires we feel, they are not separate from us, but are expressions of the same universal energy that flows through everything. We are not at odds with ourselves, we are part of the flow of life. As we embrace this understanding, we begin to live in harmony with ourselves and the world. We stop resisting the natural flow of life and instead align ourselves with it. We stop trying to control or manipulate circumstances, and instead we learn to respond to life with openness, acceptance, and grace. When we live from this place of interconnectedness, we find that life becomes simpler, more peaceful, and more meaningful. We no longer feel the need to constantly prove our worth or fight against the current. We simply flow with it, knowing that we are part of something far greater than ourselves. This is the power of realizing that we are not separate. It is a powerful shift in perception that dissolves the walls we've built between ourselves and the world. When we see through the illusion of separation, we find a profound sense of peace and connection that transcends our individual self. We are not alone. We are part of everything. And in that realization, we are free to live fully, to experience life with an open heart and mind, and to embrace the beauty of our shared existence. The world often leads us to believe that we are defined by our thoughts, our actions, and our circumstances. We think that who we are is shaped by what we do, what we have, and what others think of us. We attach our sense of identity to these external factors, believing that we are the sum of our achievements, our possessions, and our relationships. But the truth is that this is not who we really are. The person you are is not defined by your thoughts or your past experiences. You are not your mistakes, your successes, or the roles you play in society. You are not the stories that you tell yourself about who you are. Beneath all these layers, at the very core of your being, there is a part of you that is timeless, unchanging, and unconditioned. It is this essence that truly defines who you are. When we live in a world where we are constantly bombarded by external influences, it's easy to lose touch with this deeper aspect of ourselves. We are conditioned to think that we are what we do, and because of this, we constantly strive for more success, more recognition, more possessions. We live in a culture that constantly reinforces the idea that our worth is tied to our accomplishments and the opinions of others. This mindset creates a constant sense of inadequacy because no matter how much we achieve, it never feels like enough. We continue to chase after the next goal, the next prize, convinced that this time we will finally feel whole. But this endless cycle of striving keeps us disconnected from our true selves, because it's based on the belief that we are not enough as we are. The truth is that we are already whole, already complete. Our worth does not come from what we achieve or from the approval of others. It comes from the very essence of who we are which exists beyond the fluctuating thoughts and emotions that come and go. Our true nature is the stillness beneath the surface, the awareness that is present even when the mind is noisy. We are not our thoughts. We are the consciousness that observes them. We are not the emotions that rise and fall within us. We are the awareness that allows us to feel them without being overwhelmed by them. When we begin to recognize this truth, we can start to detach ourselves from the stories that we constructed about who we are. We stop identifying with our past experiences, our successes, and our failures. We let go of the need to prove ourselves because we understand that we don't need to earn our worth. It is inherent within us, always has been, and always will be. This understanding brings freedom because it releases us from the pressure to perform, to conform, and to fit into a mold created by societal expectations. Instead, we can simply be. We can be ourselves, free from the constant need to measure up. The process of connecting with this deeper aspect of ourselves begins when we let go of the false identities we've constructed. We stop defining ourselves by the labels we've adopted, our job title, our relationships. These labels are useful in the world of form, but they are not who we are at our core. They are just roles we play in a temporary story. When we stop clinging to these labels, we begin to tap into the truth of who we really are. We begin to experience ourselves as something much greater than our external identity. We are not limited by our past, by our failures, or by our achievements. We are vast, boundless consciousness. In this process of disidentifying from our thoughts and roles, we also start to embrace the present moment more fully. The mind often takes us out of the present and into the past or future, convincing us that we are our memories or our hopes and fears. But the present moment is all we ever truly have. It is in this moment, right now, that we can access the essence of who we are. When we stop trying to change or fix ourselves, when we stop striving for approval or success, we can simply be present with ourselves as we are. This presence allows us to feel the stillness and peace that reside within us, regardless of what is happening in our external world. As we begin to connect more deeply with our true nature, we experience a shift in how we relate to the world. We no longer look to the world to define us or give us our sense of worth. We stop seeking validation in external achievements or in the approval of others. Instead, we come to understand that our worth is innate and it comes from within. This realization frees us from the constant struggle for external validation. It allows us to act from a place of authenticity because we are no longer motivated by the desire to prove ourselves. We can live in a way that is true to who we are, not based on what others expect from us, but based on the quiet knowing that we are already enough. The liberation that comes from understanding that you are not your thoughts or your actions is profound. It gives you the freedom to live fully and authentically without the constant pressure of trying to live up to some external standard. You are free to be yourself, and in that freedom you discover a deep sense of peace and contentment that is not dependent on external circumstances. When you stop identifying with the stories that the mind creates, you step into a deeper awareness of who you truly are, an awareness that is unchanging, always present, and forever whole. We live in a world that constantly feeds us the idea that our identity is shaped by what we do, what we own, and what others think of us. Society teaches us that we are the sum of our achievements, possessions, and relationships. From an early age, we are conditioned to measure our worth based on external factors: how well we perform in school, how successful our career is, how popular we are, how much money we have. We internalize these values and begin to believe that our sense of self is directly tied to these external markers. We start to think that the person we are is defined by the roles we play and the accomplishments we achieve. But the truth is, we are much more than that. We are not defined by what we do or what we have. We are not our achievements, our failures, our possessions, or the labels others place on us. At the core of our being, we are something much deeper, something that cannot be reduced to any external factor. When we buy into the illusion that our identity is based on what we do, we begin to tie our sense of worth to the outcomes of our actions. We work harder, strive more, and push ourselves to achieve more, believing that this will bring us fulfillment. Yet, despite our efforts, we often find ourselves feeling empty, restless, and unfulfilled. No matter how much we achieve or accumulate, there is always the sense that something is missing. The reason for this is simple. The things we attach ourselves to in the external world can never truly define us. They are temporary, fleeting, and ever-changing. The achievements we pride ourselves on today can become irrelevant tomorrow, and the possessions we covet can be lost in an instant. When we base our identity on these things, we are constantly on a never-ending chase for validation and fulfillment, which ultimately leads to a sense of dissatisfaction. Our true nature, however, is not based on anything external. It is not contingent on our accomplishments, our relationships, or our material possessions. At the core of our being, there is a stillness, an awareness that simply is. This essence, this inner knowing, exists independent of the external world. It is who we are at our most fundamental level, before any labels or stories are attached to us. When we begin to tap into this deeper aspect of ourselves, we realize that we don't need to prove our worth through achievements or possessions. Our worth is inherent, and it is not something that can be earned or lost. It is simply who we are. In our culture, we are taught to constantly strive for more, to constantly prove ourselves in order to feel worthy. We are told that we are not enough as we are, and that our value is determined by what we accomplish. This mindset keeps us trapped in a cycle of striving, of always trying to reach the next goal, the next milestone, the next level of success. But no matter how much we achieve, there is always the next goal to chase, and the sense of fulfillment we seek remains elusive. This endless striving creates a constant sense of dissatisfaction because it is based on the false belief that we are not enough as we are. The truth is, we are already enough, just as we are. We don't need to prove our worth to anyone, and we don't need to achieve anything in order to feel complete. When we begin to let go of the false identities we have created based on our accomplishments and possessions, we start to experience life in a different way. we begin to realize that we don't have to be anyone other than who we are in this moment. We are not our past mistakes, our successes, or our failures. We are not the labels others place on us, nor are we the roles we play in society. We are something deeper, something timeless. We are the awareness that witnesses all of these things, the consciousness that experiences life but is not defined by it. This shift in perception allows us to live with greater freedom. When we stop identifying with our external circumstances, we free ourselves from the pressure to constantly perform and prove ourselves. We stop comparing ourselves to others because we realize that our worth is not contingent on anyone else's achievements. We stop chasing after external validation because we know that we are already complete. In this freedom, we find peace. We begin to act from a place of authenticity, not because we need to impress others, but because it feels true to who we are. As we release the need to define ourselves by external factors, we start to experience a deeper sense of connection with ourselves and with others. We stop viewing others as competition or as threats to our sense of worth, and instead we see them as fellow beings who are also on their own journey. We recognize that we are all interconnected and that our value does not come from what we have or what we do, but from the simple fact that we exist. This understanding allows us to cultivate compassion, empathy, and understanding for ourselves and others, knowing that we are all worthy of love and acceptance, just as we are. Ultimately, the realization that we are not defined by what we do or have is liberating. It allows us to stop chasing after external validation and instead find peace in simply being. When we embrace this truth, we step into a life of authenticity where we can be fully present and fully ourselves, free from the need to prove our worth to anyone. We no longer need to chase after external accomplishments to feel good about ourselves. We simply live, knowing that we are enough, just as we are. The mind has an extraordinary ability to convince us that we are separate from the world around us. We are taught to think of ourselves as individuals, isolated in our own unique experiences. From this perspective, we live in a world of me versus them, where we constantly compare ourselves to others, judge ourselves against societal standards, and measure our worth based on how we stack up. This sense of separation can feel very real, especially when we find ourselves struggling, feeling disconnected or lost in the chaos of our lives. Yet, this sense of separation is ultimately an illusion. Beneath the surface of our thoughts and perceptions, we are all part of a greater whole, a vast, interconnected web of life that transcends our individual identities. Think about the way we experience the world. We wake up in the morning and, without thinking, we step into a world that appears to be separate from us. We move through our day interacting with people, objects, and events that seem distant and separate from who we are. But when we pause to reflect, we begin to see that the world is not as separate from us as it first appears. Everything we encounter, the people, the places, the objects, the very air we breathe, is interconnected. In fact, we are part of everything that surrounds us. The mind, however, creates a false narrative of separation. It convinces us that we are isolated individuals, alone in our own experience, when in reality we are deeply connected to everything in existence. At the deepest level, the perception of separation is rooted in the way we identify ourselves. We believe that who we are is defined by the stories we tell ourselves. The story of who we were in the past, who we are in the present, and who we hope to be in the future. These stories create boundaries around our identity, reinforcing the sense of separateness. We see ourselves as distinct from the people we meet, the situations we face, and the world we inhabit. We forget that at the core, we are not separate from anything or anyone. We are part of the same energy, the same essence that flows through all of life. The illusion of separation is also evident in the way we view others. We often see people as other, as separate from ourselves, as individuals who are different from us, who have their own stories, desires, and experiences. This creates a divide between us and them, often leading to feelings of competition, judgment, and conflict. Yet, when we truly look at others, we begin to realize that we are not so different after all. Beneath the surface, we share the same human experiences, the same fears, the same hopes, the same desires. We all yearn for love, connection, and meaning. When we move beyond the stories that divide us, we see that the essence of every person is the same. We are all expressions of the same universal energy, and our experiences are more alike than they are different. The more we embrace this understanding, the more we dissolve the boundaries that separate us from others. This recognition of interconnectedness also extends to the natural world. We often think of ourselves as separate from nature, as if we are outsiders observing the world around us from a distance. But when we take a moment to truly connect with nature, we begin to realize that we are not separate from it. The same elements that make up the earth, the water, the air, the soil, are the same elements that make up our bodies. The trees that provide oxygen, the animals that roam the land, the plants that grow from the earth, all of these are part of the same system that sustains us. We are not separate from the earth. We are part of it. Our bodies are composed of the very same elements that make up the mountains. When we see ourselves as part of nature, we begin to feel a deeper sense of respect, reverence, and connection to the world around us. This interconnectedness is not just a philosophical concept or a nice idea. It is a living, breathing truth that we can experience in every moment. When we let go of the illusion of separation, we begin to notice the subtle connections between ourselves and the world. We see that our thoughts and actions ripple out and affect those around us. We recognize that our choices have an impact on the world, and that the world, in turn, shapes who we are. The more we embrace this interconnectedness, the more we understand that we are not isolated individuals, but rather part of the vast, interconnected web of life. This understanding brings a profound sense of peace, because it allows us to move through the world with a sense of unity and purpose, knowing that we are not alone in our journey. The sense of separation we feel is a creation of the mind, but the reality is that we are all part of the same whole. When we release the belief in separateness and begin to see the connections that bind us all together, we step into a new way of being. We live with greater compassion, empathy, and understanding, knowing that we are all reflections of the same universal energy. We no longer need to fight against the world or compete with others, because we realize that we are all part of the same dance of life. And in this understanding, we find freedom, a freedom that comes from embracing our interconnectedness and recognizing that in truth, we are never separate from anything or anyone. In the end, the journey toward understanding the truth of our existence is one of profound realization. We are not defined by our thoughts, achievements, or the roles we play in life. The sense of separation that we feel is merely a mental construct, a false narrative that the mind creates to make sense of a complex world. When we awaken to the reality of our interconnectedness, we begin to see that we are not isolated individuals, but integral parts of a vast, interconnected web of life. Every thought, every action, every breath we take is intricately linked to the world around us. The people we meet, the experiences we have, and even the natural world are not separate from us. They are reflections of the same universal energy that flows through all things. In realizing this, we free ourselves from the relentless pursuit of external validation and the false belief that our worth is contingent on what we achieve or possess. We no longer need to measure ourselves against others or try to prove our worthiness. Our true essence is already complete, and it is through reconnecting with that essence that we experience true peace and fulfillment. When we see through the illusion of separation, we embrace the beauty of our shared existence, moving through life with compassion, empathy, and understanding. In this unity, we find the freedom to live authentically and peacefully, knowing that we are part of something much greater than ourselves. The journey toward inner truth is not about striving to be more, but about realizing that we already are enough, whole, connected, and one with all that is.